which the Lord our God is giving us. So this has. That particular wording back in verse 30, what does that remind you of? What other event in Israel's history? Yes, sir.
Their time previously coming out of Egypt, God says he hardened his heart, and I think God just provided an opportunity for a heart that was already hardened.
Yeah. I think so. It's so similar in so many ways to how God worked his plan, even when, and again, he gave Sihon opportunity, just as he had given Pharaoh opportunity. He put a circumstance before Pharaoh, before Sihon, and he knew his heart. Therefore, I think he could see how he would react in that instance. But Sihon chooses war, nonetheless. Anything else at this point with Sihon? We'll continue to talk about this here just in a minute, but anything presently? All right, well, question 3 then. So God had previously noted that his people were not ready to make war with the Canaanites. So we go back to Exodus chapter 13 and verse 17. He said that the Philistines would strike fear into his people. They were not ready to make war, so he would send them off a different way. But here, this is another generation we've already talked about. They are beginning to enter into conflict. So even before they enter Canaan, God is beginning to prepare them for conquest. The question I've asked here is, what is the result of their conflict with the Amorites? We've already talked about this a little bit, but what else do you have there? Yeah, they defeated Sihon with the sword, took possession of his land, even the land that Sihon had taken from who? Other one. Well, I think, the Amorites, but I think also king of Moab, the text says, in another military conquest, he had taken land from this previous king of Moab. So again, you go back to Deuteronomy 2, we get a little more detail of what's talked about here. Verse 33 of Deuteronomy 2, "And the Lord our God delivered him over to us, so we defeated him, his sons, and all his people. We took all his cities at that time, and we utterly destroyed the men, women, and little ones of every city. We left none remaining. We took only the livestock as plunder for ourselves, with the spoil of the cities which we took. From Aroer, which is on the bank of the river Arnon, and from the city that is in the ravine as far as Gilead, there was not one city too strong for us. The Lord our God delivered all to us. Only you did not go near the land of the people of Ammon, anywhere along the river Jabbok, or to the cities of the mountains, or wherever the Lord our God had forbidden us." So they devote everything to destruction with these people, except for livestock and except for the spoil of the cities. And that seems to have been in line with the will of the Lord. And they also do not go beyond that. It says that they don't go into Ammon because, again, that was promised by the Lord to those people that they would inherit that land, so they do not encroach on that territory. So just one other thing to note here and to notice, even now in this time of Israel's history, they are beginning to see the power of the Lord again, but also to see his promises play out as they begin to inherit the land of promise. This is while Moses is still living. And this sort of history, maybe we forget, they've already sort of started conquest of the land. They haven't fully inherited the land yet. They haven't fully conquered the land. But the Lord is beginning to introduce conflict so that they can strengthen their faith and so that they can strengthen their courage as they go forward. Let's go ahead and answer question 4. And if we've got any comments or questions after that, I'd be happy to hear them. But this all kind of goes hand in hand. So after Sihon and the Amorites are defeated, who hears word of Israel's victory, and what does he decide to do about it? King Og of Bashan. And what is the result of this conflict? Israel defeats him. Let's go over to, again, Deuteronomy. This is chapter 3 now. Just continuing on in the narrative here in Deuteronomy. Then we turned and went up the road to Bashan, and Og, king of Bashan, came out against us, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. And the Lord said to me, "Do not fear him, for I have delivered him and all his people and his land into your hand. You shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon. So the Lord our God also delivered into our hands Og, king of Bashan, with all his people, and we attacked him until he had no survivors remaining. And we took all his cities at that time. There was not a city which we did not take from them. 60 cities, all the region of Argob, the kingdom of Og in Bashan. All these cities were fortified with high walls, gates, and bars, besides a great many rural towns. And we utterly destroyed them, as we did to Sihon, king of Heshbon, utterly destroying the men, women, and children of every city, but all the livestock and the spoil of the cities we took as booty for ourselves. And at that time we took the land from the hand of the 2 kings of the Amorites who were on this side of the Jordan, from the river Arnon to Mount Hermon. The Sidonians called Hermon Syrian, and the Amorites call it Senir. All the cities of the plain, all Gilead and all Bashan, as far as Salcah and Edrei, cities of the kingdom of Og in Bashan. For only, notice verse 11, for only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants. Maybe you have the word Rephaim there, which is the same meaning there. Indeed, his bedstead was an iron bedstead, is it not, in Rabbah of the people of Ammon? 9 cubits is its length, and 4 cubits its width, according to the standard cubit. This moves straight into the quote that I provided you from the Waldron material. So Israel conquers, they take 60 fortified cities within the territory. Og is a remnant of the giants, or the Rephaim. And the Waldron's note, and I think this is a great thing to notice, the spies back in Numbers 13 were afraid of giants. They were afraid of the fortified cities that they saw back in Kadesh Barnea. And by now, they say this new generation has conquered many fortified cities and even taken them from a giant. So God is doing something with this generation. Numbers 13 was the first generation. Numbers 21, Deuteronomy 2 and 3, is now this second generation. They have seen where rebellion gets you, and it's only death and destruction and punishment. They choose a different path, faithfulness, and saying God has promised these things. Doesn't matter if it's a giant, doesn't matter if it's 60 or 6,000 fortified cities. God will provide. and we can conquer, and we can take this land. So I think that's a good thing to notice here. Any other comments or questions at this point in this lesson before we move on? All right, well, let's turn back to Numbers then, if you're not already back there. This gets into Lesson 16, and we're probably going to spend a little bit more time on this narrative just because it is so unique, and I think there's so much that we can mine from this particular part of the text. This is the story of Balaam, and it is one of the longer, I've sort of called it a side narrative, if we can use that phrase. Throughout most of the narrative, Moses and any of the other major characters that we've been talking about are not mentioned in this narrative. But what transpires in this history gives us some critical details moving forward in the history of Israel. So we want to notice those things. We want to notice how it affected them and how it affects us even today as Christians, as God's people. So the very first question, which is really not a question, but just more of a note, looking to your maps there, I've just asked you to notice where the children of Israel are at this moment. They're encamped on the plains of Moab, once again, so they're in this region here, across the Jordan River on the eastern side, and they are a day's march closer from Jericho. So this is where they're encamped, and we're really only going to be talking about Israel from the perspective of Balaam and Balak in this story, as they look on the children of Israel and look down on them. So moving straight into question 2 then, as the people camp on the plains of Moab, what is the reaction of the Moabites and of King Balak, who is among those people? They were very afraid. Good. What are some of the what do your translations say there for what their reaction was? So this is 22, I guess verse 3 thereabouts. So very afraid. Anyone have anything else? Sore afraid. Yeah, it's the old King James. Love that. Sick with dread. So it's sort of that image. You're just sick to your stomach. It's so bad. You're so afraid. Maybe we've been there before with certain things. Great dread. They're overcome with fear, some others say. And Balak says what specifically that Israel is going to do with his nation. They're going to do what?
He's going to take everything.
Yeah, they're going to
lick up everything around.
That's right. Yeah, you love that imagery. This horde will now lick up all that is around us as the ox licks up the grass of the field. So it's just going to be as nothing to them. It's just going to be, ox food to bring that imagery to mind. Verses 5 and 6, I think, are interesting. Where in what Balak decides to do. Of course, he ends up sending for Balaam, but again, how does he describe Israel at this level? Well, he had great fear of them, but why? Not only had they had many victories, but what's the...
Camping right next to him.
They're camping right next to him, and there's a lot of them. Yeah. So look, a people has come from Egypt. See, they cover the face of the earth and are settling next to me, as was noted. And then he, of course, sends for Balaam. Does that particular detail of this people is too great for me, they're too mighty for me, they're numerous, does that remind us of anything else previously in Israel's history? Who else has talked in similar ways?
When the spies went out to the land, Caleb and Joshua said that.
Yeah, well, that's true. The spies did say that about, so Israel, no spies, said that about Canaan itself. That is a good note. I hadn't Hadn't put that in my notes, but that is a good point. But thinking specifically about just another leader of another foreign nation when they're talking about Israel, you go back to Exodus chapter 1, right? Go back to Exodus 1, and let's just notice how Pharaoh talks about Israel here. Exodus 1 in verse 7. And this is Moses writing here at this point, so we don't get this particular exclamation from Pharaoh, but he notices it, as we'll see here in a minute. But the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly, multiplied and grew exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. So that word for exceedingly mighty is the same word that Balak uses over there in Numbers 22. But you go down to verse 9. He, that is Pharaoh, said to his people, "Look, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we." And so, I think there are a lot of similarities that we can see, some rhyming, some poetry in terms of the history that's happening here of what Pharaoh decides to do as a result of Israel being this way, what Balak chooses to do. Balak wants to curse the people. Pharaoh, when he notices that the people are too numerous or too numerous for him, he first sends slave masters after them, driving them harder than they had before. That's verses 11 through 14 of chapter 1. He then tells the midwives to kill all the male children, trying to squelch and stop any reproduction amongst the nation. And then he goes even a little further. He commands then that every male child be thrown into the Nile River. And it's after that third sort of push that then we see the appearance of Moses, who would be the savior of his people. One thing that we may mention a little later on when we come to the story of Balaam, Balak tries to get Balaam to curse Israel several times. Once, twice, 3 times, and it's after the third time that Balak says, "Didn't I ask you to curse this people? And yet you've blessed them anyway." And it's in that fourth attempt that Balaam makes that then we see this coming of a Savior, which I think is maybe an interesting parallel and maybe something we can put together with the earlier attempt by Pharaoh to put down Israel. But Balaam, or Balak rather, says back in Numbers, and it is interesting that he says this. In verse 6, this exact language is used. "Perhaps I shall be able to defeat them." This is Balak talking of Israel, "and drive them out of the land. For I know that he whom you bless is blessed, and he whom you curse is cursed." What does that phrase remind us of? Genesis 12 and verse 3, right? What God says to Abraham, "Those who bless you I will bless, and those who curse you I will curse." And Balak is kind of twisting that and I don't know that he knew of the Abrahamic promise there, but it is interesting that he uses that phrase, and we'll see some of this play out a little bit more through the story. Anything else there? Yes, sir.
Just a quick note. One of the things that strikes us about this story is how low their opinion is of God. Mm-hmm. So Balak thinks, look, if I can bribe you, you can control God, and then I can control God. That's just not how it works. Yeah. And, this is the problem. Pharaoh thought, well, I can outdo God. He found out he sure couldn't. But it's a good reminder, the pride of men in ignoring the will of God or trying to manipulate, God in some way. It will never work. Mm-hmm. Our job is to find God's will and to humble ourselves, not to try to change His will. And this is we're talking about here, to bless those or curse those He's blessed.
That's right. Balak and Pharaoh, for that matter, had such a sort of humanistic, materialistic way of thinking about God and thinking about God in the way that they thought about their own gods, frankly. And we see that borne out in the text with Balak, where he tries to sort of change the circumstances. Well, this curse didn't work this way because we didn't have all the pieces weren't together exactly how they needed to be. So we'll change the sacrifices or change the location or whatever it might be. But yes, it is such a low view of God. That's a great point. Anything else there on that? All right, well, question 3 then. According to the text, who is Balaam? Let's start there. How is Balaam described? Where does he come from? And what did you have for that? Mm-hmm.
Soothsayer.
Yeah. And Joshua 13 in particular, as I referenced there, gives note of that. If you look up the word, he was from Pathor, and you look up what the word Pathor means in the original in Hebrew, it means soothsayer, which is interesting. So Pathor, what city was Pathor a part of? And you don't have to give me the exact location necessarily, but was this part of Israel? This was a part of ancient Mesopotamia, so Balaam was not an Israelite, was he? And yet he was a prophet of God. God spoke to him. He spoke for God. There's a relationship of some sort there. He goes on to tell Balak, as Balak sins for him, what? What is his response? Or how does that play out? Maybe we can say too. Yes, sir.
He just tells them to wait.
Mm-hmm.
He will tell them, I guess, the next day
Yeah.
what the answer will be.
Yes. And what does the Lord say to Balaam? When Balaam says, well, here's the situation, here's where these men are from, they want me to do this, what does God say?
Don't go with it.
Don't go. It's really as simple as that. You don't go with those men. Because my people are blessed. And Balaam brings that exact message back to those men. And then they go off. So far, so good, as far as we can see from the text. And I wish that's where it stopped, but it's not. So we go into question 4 then. So Balak sends word to Balaam again with princes more numerable and honorable, the text says, than the first time, seemingly, and it would be inferred with maybe more promise of glory and honor and riches and so forth, sort of trying to give Balaam a big head, perhaps. What is Balaam's response this time? And also ask the question, did he do anything wrong in this response? So what did he say this time? Well, yes, and even before that, what does he say? Something I think we would agree with.
You give me all your gold and silver, I wouldn't go with you.
Yeah,
God has already told me not to do it. However, stay here overnight.
yeah,
And God comes to him again.
that's right. Yeah, he says, where's the verse here? Yeah, as you said, Brother Allen, though Balak, verse 18, were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not go beyond the word of the Lord my God to do less or more. We're all familiar here, I think, with that sort of language. That was a phrase used a lot during Alexander Campbell's day, or similar language. We use similar language today. We speak where the Bible speaks, and we're silent where the Bible is silent, that sort of language. I think that's good and proper language. But again, as Brother Allen pointed out, what had God already said? Plain and simple.
No.
Don't go. And yet Balaam says, maybe he changed his mind.
Yeah, let me talk to him again.
Yeah, let me see. Maybe we can work something out here after seeing those more honorable princes and officials and riches, perhaps. So there are so many folks that know the truth. And I'm not talking about, I guess we can talk about maybe some things that are nuanced, where maybe it does require a little bit more discussion. But when we're talking about commandments such as don't go, there's no room for wiggle room there. You can't skirt around that. And that's exactly what Balaam is trying to do, where he says, well, let me just go back for a second look. Maybe we can figure something out. We ourselves also have to be careful about that sort of mentality. I heard there was a debate recently up in Athens, and there was a gentleman there who I think even many here would know, but he was a gospel preacher for many years. He's left the Lord, but he was using language in that debate, arguing from a Calvinistic standpoint. He would say, well, guys, we've just got to speak where the Bible speaks, and we've got to be silent where the Bible is silent, because he knows the kind of crowd he's speaking to. And we would agree with that phrase by itself, but when you look at the underbelly of what he's trying to put before you, it's not something where the Bible speaks. In fact, the Bible is silent about much of those things. So we need to watch out for that. We need to approach God's Word with humility, with devotion to the text and what it says, and watch out for when others tend to speak in this way. So I think that's maybe one lesson we can begin to take from Balaam's story here. Any other comment there? Yes, sir.
I think this is probably the point in time at which we see Balaam beginning to get dollar signs in his eyes.
Yeah.
Because Balaam brings up the idea of a house full of gold and silver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Balak just sent representatives to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And perhaps they had more money.
Yeah, sure.
But Balaam is the one who brings the money up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's beginning to get a little weak.
Yeah. It's a good point. It may be, yeah, where he's maybe trying to introduce that idea to Balak and these men. And we'll talk about this probably on Wednesday, but the New Testament talks about Balaam in a way of someone who was greedy. And it was because of greed that he then put stumbling blocks before God's people. So I think, yeah, that seems to be, maybe this was the point in time where Balaam sort of made a switch, where he just needed a little bit more motivation, as it were, to go beyond the word of the Lord. And that's what he does here. Anything else on that? All right, well, we've got just a couple of minutes here, so let's just introduce what takes place next. This is question 5. So Balaam, first of all, God does say to Balaam, go, which is interesting. And I think we'll see maybe why he says that. But the Lord says, you go on ahead, and so he saddles his donkey, and he goes forward. Did I see a hand there? Yes, sir.
And until you get to that point, it's kind of like, I say it's your anniversary. And ball game on, you gotta get together with your friends on this day. Call your wife and say, I'm gonna go with my friends, watch a ball game. She says, okay. Now, what do we think about that particular answer under those circumstances?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, there's an allowance here of God. God lets Balaam practice his free will. And we'll see if Balaam learns the lesson from there. And this is one of the more famous parts, I think probably the most famous part of Balaam's story. But let's just save that for Wednesday, shall we? I think that's, I don't want to get too far ahead because we've really only got maybe less than 30 seconds. But go ahead and look at question 5 forward, maybe go on to lesson 17. There is more material in the back for the next lessons, so that'll be 18 and 19, so you can go ahead and pick those up in the back. Thank you.